Greetings, good people. This is Barbara Ohuninifa. You also may know me as Barbara Pamplin, or depending on how old school you are, it might be B-Dub. But I'm here to talk today about, as you can see from the title of this live, Grateful for Trauma, which sounds crazy, but I'm just sitting here reflecting and wanted to go live and share some of the thoughts. And that's really what it boils down to, just kind of the thoughts that I'm having now, or the feelings, the downloads that are coming for me now. So for those of you who are familiar with me or familiar with my work, I stand for Black women who have gone through surviving, thriving, managing, navigating life after trauma. And sometimes I say health trauma, sometimes just trauma in general. But the idea is that as Black women, we go through things that are traumatic, but we are taught to keep moving, to keep going. And I am here to talk to us and to give some insights, inspiration, and sometimes just to look for insights and inspiration for myself, as someone who has survived quite a few different things. And so if that sounds like something that's your jam, something that you're interested in, please subscribe, click like, and share this video, and ring the bell notification so that you know when I go live or when I post a new video. And with that, let me talk a little bit more about, why I'm here. Uh, I've gone live and I've shared a little bit of my story here and there, but then you'll see that I haven't gone live and shared anything here recently because it's just been this summer was tough. And it's not to say that the fall will be a lot, well, the fall will be a lot different, but I'm saying that to say that I know I'm like a lot of people. When we're going through things, we tend to isolate. I have had a lifelong experience, battle, relationship with depression and anxiety. And I was having a lot of highs and lows as I'm going through major transformation and transition in my life. Even, you would think I've been through it all, but, apparently the universe is not done with me, in terms of growing me into the person that I am here to be and doing the things that I'm here to do, which part of that is sharing my experiences so that others can learn from my experiences, can pivot when they need to pivot, can go deeper when they need to go deeper, and can really grow and learn so that my experiences, any pain and trauma that I go through, is not just for me. So I just wanted to explain that and why there has been some inconsistencies, but I give myself grace in that because sometimes you just got to go in. But also sometimes you got to shake off the haters and just say what you got to say. So today's topic, gratitude for trauma. And I'm talking about this coming out of a weekend where I spent about 3 days with health advocates from a whole range and host of different health conditions at what's called the Health E-Voices Conference that was created and hosted by Johnson & Johnson in New Jersey. In fact, I'm still here in New Jersey visiting with my bestie from college and, just taking some time. But that conference was my first time at this conference, and it was life-changing, being to an extent validated, because out in the world sometimes people don't want to hear. People have a very difficult time dealing with and addressing health conditions, whether it's their own and certainly other people. Sometimes they just shut down, don't want to hear more. And those of us that are kind of living with this day to day, sometimes we need that support, especially the advocates, the health advocates that are talking to people so that those who aren't on that kind of front line sharing experiences don't feel alone. Because oftentimes those of us, and we realize this, and I realize that I'm not the only one experiencing this, that when you're in these chronic or acute health conditions, you can often feel alone. And so being with this group of people that are all sharing their tips and advice, supporting one another, pouring into each other, and the team at Johnson & Johnson poured into us, and we got to talk about things that that we all go through and experience. And I was actually a speaker at this event. And one of the things, I guess the underlying key theme that I talked about was this idea of trauma. And trauma comes in many different forms. And whether we realize it or not, many of us are born with trauma. Aside from the actual experience of being born, the science of epigenetics lets us know if we have ancestry that has been through significant trauma, that trauma alters DNA and comes with us through the generations, so that we're born and we're still carrying the legacy of that trauma that our foremothers and forefathers experienced. And as you can imagine, as a woman of African descent in the United States, I am descended from enslaved Africans. And so that's 400 or 500 years of trauma. And I say 500 because I include the diaspora and all the other places that they took the enslaved Africans, the kidnapped Africans, before they even started coming to the United States. And that was for about 100 years before they came here. And so that's being born with that trauma that we don't even know or understand or realize. And the body does, though. The body will experience that trauma, and can manifest in different ways. But beyond that, if that wasn't enough, we also have betrayal trauma. We have, and some of the atrocities that happen to us as enslaved Africans can be considered a type of betrayal trauma, being something where someone you trusted, an entity you trusted, an institution that you trusted betrays you, harms you, does things to you that are inhumane. And that definitely is a way that I would describe slavery globally, and especially the African slave trade. So that's a form of betrayal trauma, but it can be as simple as, something that I experienced in my previous marriages is infidelity. You pledge to a marriage or relationship and make commitments, and when those commitments are broken or truths are not told, and things like that. And so, again, there's this epigenetic or ancestral trauma. There's betrayal trauma, which can come in many different forms. And then for those of us with health conditions and health issues, whether it's, again, something long-term and chronic, or something just sudden and acute, or a combination of both, like I've experienced, it's a health trauma, almost feeling like you're betrayed by your own body. And so regardless if it's one or a multitude of those different types of trauma, and there are more types, it's something that we carry and that can't be ignored. And the trauma can either happen and trigger kind of a mental health or even a physical crisis. But the idea, and the reason I say gratitude for the trauma, is because if you pay attention, if you tune in, if you don't try to run from it, whatever the circumstances are, whatever the trauma is, if you don't try to run from it and you stand or sit in it, and I like the word stand, it's a surrendering. Well, I guess it could be stand or sit, because it's a surrendering to the why. Why is this happening? And it can't go straight to, oh, because I'm a bad person. You may go there first, but you need to come back from that. There is a bigger why, with the premise that nothing happens to you, it happens for you. As traumatic, as horrific as some of the things that we experience that we would categorize as trauma, even some of the things that we don't categorize as trauma because it's too difficult or too painful to do so, we're being called to look at those things that happen in our lives as an opportunity to see something we didn't see before, as an opportunity to heal something that we may not have paid attention to before. I am of the belief that, our lives, our existence is more than just this physical life that we're in right now. So if there's a thing, if epigenetics can be scientifically and has been scientifically identified and proven, that to me is just an indication that our life is a lot longer than this physical life that we're in. And so if there are things that need to get resolved, and I'm doing like this because I see it as kind of a pulsation from the past, a pulsation that comes from our ancestors, a pulsation that comes from previous experiences in humanity that we may have no memory of, but there. So when we come here and we experience trauma in this life, in our day-to-day, in our interactions with other people, in our experiences from here, whether it's at work, at school, in our relationships, in our families, again, in our bodies with our health, we experience that trauma. To me, it's a shake up to remember something, to remember, to resolve something, to go into the dark places within ourselves, mentally, emotionally, in our relationships, have hard conversations so that we can truly heal the thing. A lot of us would prefer to push it down and keep moving as if it doesn't exist, but that's not the way the world works. It's going to come up eventually. And for me, with all the different things, the aortic dissection, the pheochromocytoma, the chronic kidney disease, even keratoconus and alopecia, all of those things have come to say there's something you need to focus on. There's something you need to heal. And so, it's been a journey since I would say the biggest part of the traumatic health journey has started since 2017. There were clearly things happening before that in my life that I didn't pay attention to or didn't take seriously, but in earnest, in a way that I could not ignore, 2017 was a hell of a year. And since then, this journey of understanding the why and how to navigate it and what to learn from it has been the theme of my life, has been the focus. And then following up even last year with the pheochromocytoma and needing to have, my kidney removed and my adrenal gland removed, I've gone under the knife and had more surgeries than I ever thought I would in my life. And so each time I go through one of these things, it's almost so painful that I have to say it must serve a purpose, because I don't believe in a world where I'm just getting punished for no reason, or things that just happen because I'm a bad person, or I believe in there's some kind of original sin. It has a purpose. In my world, I live in a benevolent universe with a benevolent God or energy or source. It doesn't matter what we call it, but there is love and benevolence in the universe. And so if something painful happens, if something is traumatic to me, again, emotionally, mentally, or physically, it has to serve a purpose. It must be for a reason that is a reason of light, a reason of love. And it's being brought to me in such a way to stop me in my tracks so that I can look through the shadow, look through the darkness to find the light. So that's an experience that will bring me to that light and love in that process. And so in order to do that, one of the first things I have to have, and it just looking for this is work in and of itself, is the gratitude for the trauma. Would I have preferred to learn and value myself without having to have multiple open heart surgeries? Would I have preferred to have this self-love without having to go through so much heartbreak and heartache? Absolutely. But apparently that wasn't the path that was for me or that I chose. I chose a path that was a little bit more difficult. But for that, I still got to that end where I'm like, I have to prioritize myself. I love my babies. I love my children. They're old enough now. And even if they weren't, I have to prioritize myself, not in a selfish way. I always feel like I have to clarify that. But prioritizing yourself, especially as a woman, can be a difficult thing because we're taught to put everybody and everything else ahead of ourselves. Our spouses or mates and partners, our children, our jobs, our communities, but none of that can get the fullness of the benefit of our efforts unless we pour into ourselves first. And that was a hard lesson, quite honestly, that I'm still learning, that my mother didn't learn and get or teach to us because she didn't have it. And her ancestor mothers and mothers and grandmothers didn't have it. And so it's something that we have to do now. And so when I look at it in that way, if I look at this trauma that happens, this thing that has happened to me, to my body, to my experiences, as I look at that, reframe it as a call from my ancestral mothers, that pulsation from the past, whether it's my past of things I experienced as a child or or growing up or earlier in my life and along the way, because you get to be 51 years old, you're just like, damn, I had like 8 lives. But looking at that trauma as a message, as a beacon, as an indicator that there's something. Wow, that was a loud car. But there's something that I have to pay attention to when I look at it as a whispering that has gotten loud enough to have a physical manifestation in my world, a whispering from my ancestors, a whispering from my higher self that is now a shout and a vibrational shock to my system. Then I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm going to listen to it in a different way instead of run away from the trauma, the grief of the changes that my body has gone through, the changes of my life and the things like that. I'm going to lean into it and say, what is that telling me? What is that trying to give me a message about? What is it telling me to change? Whether I've been raised in a certain way that has me thinking in a certain way, that trauma might be saying, you got to change how you think. You have to change who you interact with. You have to change your own vibrational output. And for those who don't understand it, it's just, we can just say changing your outlook on life, how you see the world. The trauma, the things that we experience that are less than desirable, that don't just put you in a state of joy, why is it there? Because we're not as hopeless and helpless as we are made to believe. If something is happening, it's for us. And we have to do that work to actually understand what it is. And to do that, you gotta have courage, because it is not for the faint of heart. You got to be able to look into the darkness, into the trauma, to understand it and to understand yourself and to understand where it came from. And sometimes it's a lot to do on your own. And so trauma-informed therapy is critical. And one of the things I spoke about at the Health eVoices conference, with this idea of trauma is that healthcare professionals have to or should be approaching everything they do as trauma-informed care. They need training on trauma-informed care. We walk into the doctor and they may be only experienced with one particular part of your body, without the realization and understanding that the trauma that you experienced as a child is now showing up in your body. Dr. Gabor Mate, if I'm saying his name correctly, has a whole body of work on this, and it's fascinating. And it shows up time and time again. As I said, I grew up with depression for as long as I can remember. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I was actually diagnosed for it. Thank you to my mama for making me go and get that diagnosis. But even then, no one explained, or perhaps they didn't know, all of the other health conditions and issues that stem from a mental health condition like depression and anxiety. So having cardiovascular health issues, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, is almost a given as a possibility. And I always say possibility because nothing is set in stone where this is just going to happen. But a high correlation between anxiety and depression and heart disease. And then the high correlation between heart disease and kidney disease. The reality is that we're one body, so things that we experience mentally, emotionally, spiritually show up in our bodies physically. So, coming back to the theme and the title of this, grateful for trauma. Yes, I'm grateful for trauma because for the aortic dissection, for all of the emotional traumas since then, whether it was in my relationship, my previous marriage, just living day to day, being a Black woman in this country, being a Black woman in corporate America formerly, all these different things, the kidney disease, the adrenal gland disease, all of these things have deepened my introspection, have deepened my desire to know myself more, has deepened my desire to share with others, because there is no reason why we should all be suffering from all these different things because we're not talking to each other. So if I got to put my business on Front Street for people to know and understand what I've experienced and get some insight and some inspiration from it, then so be it. And so I'm grateful for the traumas because each time I've been through a trauma, it unclicked and unlocked something that a compartment, I'll say, within me that I had locked away, or that I was born with locked away, that I needed to bring some light into. And if I had to summarize it, I would say that's the thing that I'm grateful for. The trauma opened up an area that I had closed off, and now I can stream light into it so it can truly heal. And I would encourage all of us that have been through any type of trauma, even if it's not a physical trauma, things that we go through as children, man, there's so much that we can look at and heal from and grow. So I say, go to therapy, find yourself a good trauma informed therapist. And if you set that intention and you put forth the action, you will get aligned. You'll find someone that you can sit with and talk through these issues, past, present, not so many future issues. I would say future is more of a life coach in terms of planning and having your goals and how you move forward. But kind of unpacking trauma, sit with a therapist, and then also sit with yourself. I use writing as a key form of really connecting with myself. And there are some methodologies that will help you to do that I have found just letting go and writing. And there's some steps that you can take to do that. And I'll be talking more about that as as I go deeper into my advocacy, because aortic dissection, people need to understand what it is. Heart disease in general is a huge umbrella term. Cardiovascular disease, huge umbrella term. And so many things that can impact us. But I'll say this too, when it comes to heart disease, Black women are at risk. High blood pressure is something not to be taken lightly. Even if you go to the doctor and they take your blood pressure, 9 times out of 10, and I'm going to just put it out there, they're not taking your blood pressure correctly. A lot of most of the time, even if I'm going to a specialist who should be doing it correctly, a lot of times the nurses or the nurses' assistants in those settings, they'll like put your cuff on and then walk away while they're entering charts and your blood pressure being taken. But the reality is you should be calm for at least 5 minutes, sitting, feet flat on the floor, back straight and supported, your arm at level with your heart, and sit that way for a few moments before they start taking the blood pressure. And maybe even do that once or twice to get an accurate reading. That is never the way it's done. So I'll tell you right now, when you get your blood pressure reading at a doctor's office, it may or may not be accurate. But even then, quite often they may just say, oh, it is it's a little high. But the thing is, if your blood pressure is high, it's something that you need to check. And high, I'll just say generally anything over 120/80. But of course, talk to your doctor, ask the question, inquire, bring up the fact that many Black women have high blood pressure and don't realize it's an issue and it's something you want to track. And if it's not an issue, cool, boom. Check the box, just check it every now and then when you're at your doctor's to get some insight on that. Otherwise, stay on it. Make the changes you need to make in your life. Let go of stress. Let go of people, places, and circumstances that cause you stress. Again, prioritize yourself. I can go on and on. But coming back to the point, grateful for trauma. It can be a gateway to understanding yourself. Trauma can be. It can be a gateway to understanding the conditions that you grew up in. It can be a gateway to understanding a recurring theme throughout your life or throughout your family that needs to be addressed. Look at the trauma, don't run away from it, and be grateful for it and follow through on understanding it. So if this is the kind of content, I won't say if you enjoyed this because it may not be the kind of thing you enjoy, but if you received some inspiration, if you received something from this and something that you want to share with anyone else, please feel free to share this video, like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll put in the description, and you'll also see this in the channel description, a link to a resource where you can download a mini workbook. And in this mini workbook, I also have links to some short meditations because I'm about doing things incrementally in a way that you don't have to like set aside hours at a time to make these shifts in your life. And so there's micro meditations. I actually did a couple of micro meditations. I call them micro moments. I did some of that at the Health eVoices conference last weekend, that the weekend of the equinox here in North America, 2023. So I did some of those micro moments, and it's just ways that you can just take 5 minutes to ground yourself, to be with yourself, and to give yourself a little love and nurturing, which is so important no matter what you're going through, but especially if you have health issues or are navigating trauma. That is the time to be as sweet and kind to yourself as possible. And so you'll see the link in the description, also in the description for the channel, where you can sign up to download that and get access to that. And yeah, so I'll be on here a lot more as time and health permits. There's a lot again coming up for me over the next actually few months, but we'll see what spirit tells me I need to share and how to navigate that. But this today, gratitude for trauma, they just told me to share this. Gratitude, grateful for trauma, however we want to phrase that. But I appreciate those of you who are here with me live. I appreciate those who are watching the replay. What's up? Hashtag replay. I hope we're all doing even more amazing in the future as you're watching this. So with that, I give you thanks. I give you love. I give you light. Take care.